So now we are moving on to the actual cake pricing calculation. We are done with setting up the master sheet and the artist charges, and we have also done with adding the inputs for the ingredients for the specific recipe of this particular cake, which even includes the filling, frosting, the fondant and all that. And we've done calculations for the timing, the effort needed for the additional decorating elements, and then the extras, which are the cake boxes and materials. Now let's see in this particular box what is the calculation that is happening. So the first thing that you see here is the cost of the ingredients. So the cost of the ingredients is coming up to 517 rupees. That is the sum of all the ingredients, the individual ones for this entire cake. Okay. So now the base selling price, this is the most important thing that you need to understand. The base selling price of the cake should be 3 times the cost price, whatever ingredients. The sum of all the ingredients multiplied by 3 is the base selling price. So that gets calculated automatically here in this particular row where I am highlighting. So this is the cost that you can sell that particular cake without having a loss. So now why 3 times? Okay. So the first part is the cost of the ingredients, and the second part will be calculated for the wastages, the overheads, okay, which is like the electricity bill that you need to pay for the oven that is working for you, and then the wastages could be a lot, starting from the flour that you're sifting, or then maybe you're just taking up a little more and then not using them up. And it also could be the water in which you are going to wash the vessels, and then even water is just in the meter and it's being charged these days, right? So all these wastages and the overheads, and then the rent for the place that you even if it is your house, you need to be costing something for the rent also. And if you have a separate place that you already rented, then that is also the overhead, and that also will be the second part. And in case you have anybody that you are employed to help you out and you're going to pay them the salary, then this second part has all of that for this particular cake. Now you need to be doing as many cakes to cover up all the overheads. So your overheads will be your electricity bill, your house, the rent for your outlet or your home itself, and then your help, additional assistance that you have and you're paying for them, and then the wastages, and the water meter, and then the electricity. So all of this will be your overheads. And the second part of this formula, with the one that is multiplied by 3, like I said, the first part is the ingredient cost itself, the second part is the overheads, and the third part is the profit, the basic profit that you will be getting out of this whole cake. Okay, so that is the minimum that anybody in the food industry should be getting out of any food business that they are doing. This is not just for cakes, this you could use it for any food business as well. So multiplying by 3 is the key that anybody who are selling edible stuffs could do. Now when you do this multiplying by 3, you are going to sell something with a basic profit, but it is not too much, but that is the right amount. You cannot sell a product that is anything less than this base selling price. If you sell this particular cake after all these efforts, then you would be selling that particular cake for a loss. Okay, because in that particular thing, you can see that the extras are not added, okay, and then your artist charges are not added. So for any extra effort that you have put in, then those values are not even considered. Then that way it will not be a profit for you. Okay, so the base selling price, you need to understand it is being multiplied by 3, and you know why and what are the 3 parts for, and you can start selling your cakes right from this price and not anything less than that. Okay, now you have a green cell there which says about additional margin. Now here is where you need to step in for yourself, because I cannot define that value. You need to step in for yourself and then decide, I need an additional margin. So this base margin is not enough for the amount of effort that I am putting in. and I need an additional margin for the work that I am doing. That could be anywhere between 10 to 25%. 25 is like on the higher side. Your 10 is decent enough, it's nominal. Not adding additional margin at all is also the call that you have to take, deciding that okay, now this base price is good enough for this particular cake, then I'm going to stop doing that, because on top of that you will be adding your artist charges for each of the elements that you're working on, right? And then the cost of the actuals like the cake boxes. Now without adding the additional margin, if I come down to see the final selling price is 2593, so you could just round it up to 2600. Now without a margin for for this particular cake, which is I'm going to show you what is the weight. Now you know your recipe, right? For whatever kilos of cake the client is asked, you know how much of ingredients you're going to use, and that is what we have input here. And finally, after the addition of fondant and the filling and all that, you could just add all the values in this quantity used in the recipe that I've highlighted here. You can see the sum, right? That is 1478, which is approximately 1500 grams, which is 1.5 kilo. 1.5 kgs of cake is what we are talking about. Now for a 1.5 kilos, so the final selling price, what you see here, is a 2593, which is approximately 2600 rupees without an additional margin. But here you have costed your artist charges, so that additional pricing is added. So if you see the difference between the base selling price and the final selling price, there is a difference where that charges comes from my artist charges, which here you can see is 781 for the additional effort that I am putting in. And then the actuals you can see here that you have to obviously charge, because they are the cake boxes stuff that you have to charge, like for what you've bought them for. Okay, now here, now I'm going to decide. I just need that additional margin. I feel like this is not up to the market standards. Now I go there and input a 10%. Now the values change, the final selling price changes. Earlier it was, let's get back to removing that, only the greens I have to change. If I delete, I have a 2593. If I have a 10% profit, then it changes to 2749 at 200 rupees. It is not too much, but it is up to you to decide what value you're going to input. Now let me have a 25%, and then it goes up to somewhere around 3000. So this is not a huge value, but then if you have a cumulative amount of this extra margin for each of the cake, then for the entire month that additional profit you would have made. And as a suggestion, I am asking you to add an additional margin, because that would be needed. You don't have to stick to that base selling price, just to make sure that you're not going to overly price your cakes, and that you need more market, you need more orders, and I don't want to overprice. If you deliberately feel so, then you could go as per your instinct to not add the additional margin at all, or have the additional margin from 10 to 25%, anywhere within that. And after you've input that, what the things that change here, you can see the selling price including margin has that additional margin as well, right, from the base selling price. And then the next row, it directly takes the artist charges. It is populating as 781 rupees. And then the extras as per actuals again come down here, that are 260 rupees. And the final selling price is the addition of the selling price including margin plus artist charges plus the extras as per actuals. And again, here, like I said before, the number of product, this is a cake as a whole, right? It has all the figurines and all that. Just in case you are going to make the whole thing as cupcakes, and then it will be 12 here. Now you decide the cost of one cupcake. Now say suppose the entire recipe is going to be a cupcake form. What will happen here? My fondant will just move. Now for me to remove the fondant, I am not supposed to go and delete the entire row. You know that you have to touch only the green cells, right? So I go delete the fondant and then delete the 350 in the green. Now when I remove that, my entire costing will change. I'm not going to use so much fondant for this particular cake. Now if it is a cupcake, then maybe I am using just the ganache to frost, right? But I could use the same recipe, right? So I'm removing the mousse, the whipped ganache. I'm retaining the dark ganache here, and then I'm not going to have any artist charges for the cupcakes, right? Now only the greens I have to delete, so I am just deleting the greens. Again everything is getting recalculated. Now am I going to send a paper bag? Yeah. Knife? No. Now here I have to delete both. Candle am I going to send? No. Cake drum do I need? No. No. So what I will have at the end for it being a cupcake for this recipe is a cake box and a paper bag, right? So my actuals here comes down to 120. Now let me go back and revisit. My additional margin still remains 25. My cost of ingredients is 300. So my base selling price is 9, not 2, right? Now with my additional margin and the extras that you can see, my base selling price is 120,248. Now 12 cupcakes comes out of it. My per cupcake price is 104. Okay, so now let me go and remove the additional margin. I don't want a 25% margin. Then what is the cost of my cupcake? It is 85 rupees. Okay, so this is the right price for the cupcake for the ingredients that I have used here. Maybe I could now I feel like maybe I have to be in the market, and I feel like this is maybe too much for the clientele, and if my clients are going to be like, hey, 85 rupees is like too much for a cupcake. So what you could do, either stick to this and tell people, hey, this is the quality in which I'm going to bake, and then this is what I will be giving. But then over a period of time you feel like your entire neighborhood and the clientele that who's going to order from you don't want to come to you because they don't need quality, but you still need to keep grinding, you still need to keep going with your home baking business. There are things that you could do to make you stay in the market. Either wait for the right clientele, it is a call that you need to take, because there is no right or wrong way that one could tell people, hey, do only this. There is no one way towards proceeding on this, right? So when you feel like what I could do, because see, my clientele is like asking for products for lesser price, I could stay in the market only if the costing could be a little lower than what I already have calculated here. But if I don't do this, if I don't sell this particular cupcake for 85 rupees, then I'm going to run at a loss. So what you could do to your clientele is to go cut down on the ingredients. Now, are you buying an expensive cocoa powder? Are you buying a branded chocolate? Could you maybe cut down on using the couverture and then maybe trying to use a compound instead of a couverture? Would my costing go a little lower? Instead of maybe vanilla extract, is it okay for me to use an artificial vanilla essence? So my costing could go a little lower. Now let me go and take a look at which is the one that is adding to a the pricing goes higher. Here I see vanilla, obviously, yes, and then maybe the chocolate. Now here the value that I have input for the chocolate is obviously couverture, and vanilla is pure vanilla. Now if I am going to reduce that, then my value for each cupcake could come down a bit, and that way I can decide what quality I am going to sell. So I do not run at a loss. Instead of taking a call, when you calculate and you arrive at the price of one cupcake is 85 and you want to stay in the market, by using the same recipe and same ingredients, if you are going to sell the same thing for 60 rupees, then you're running at a loss. That understanding you should have before deciding whether to come down or go high. Here again, going high is a call that you can take and decide. Now I need more profit. The additional margin is 25% and the cost has gone to 100 rupees per cupcake. That call is good for me to take, but the call for me which I should not take is to go anything less than the 85. Now if I remove this additional margin and I have this 85 which has everything added and the base formula of multiplying by 3 has happened, I cannot go below that. So if your pricing is going to be anything less than 85, then you need to understand that you are going to sell your product at loss. And if you want to stay in the market and to cut down on the costing, what you need to go is to revisit the ingredients, or maybe say try and see if you could buy butter in bulk, the flour in bulk, or don't buy in smaller quantities. See if you could buy a little quantities in a larger amount and go to the wholesale market and figure out where you get the best pricing. And that is one way where you can start from the scratch to cut down on the costing. But then follow this to know where you stand. But the call, it's up to you. I could still go ahead and then sell a cupcake for 200, where maybe I can go and decide now I need a 50% profit margin. The pricing goes high. So that call I cannot define for you. You will be defining it for yourself. What I can tell you is, do not run your business at loss. For you to know the minimum amount that you need to charge, this sheet, the Excel sheet will tell you, by not adding the additional margin at all, and then you have the value. Okay, so now as per this Excel, I have explained you how to use this Excel sheet, starting from the master sheet to filling your ingredients, and then to add the artist, starting from the monthly salary to number of days in a week to working hours in a day, and then your per hour income gets calculated. And then we have the sample sheet. Do not ever change or do anything in the sample sheet. Keep it as it is. If you have to do a new recipe, create a copy, and it is going to have this name. Change the name of that sheet, and it will be a blank sheet for you to start over and start adding the ingredients as per your recipe. Once you add them, you have to pick up from the drop down only. If you know the proper spelling of the ingredient that you're going to use, you can fully type it there. It is going to pop up for you. And if you're going to find an ingredient in your recipe which doesn't pop up, and you're just maybe trying something which is not here, it is going to throw an error like that. Now you cancel that, and you have to go to your master sheet and then include that particular ingredient here, and then that will start popping up here in the menu. After you've done with entering all the ingredients in this particular green cell, then you go ahead and then start filling the quantities used. In the quantities used, like I said, you need to add everything in grams or ml, and if your recipe does not give you the gram values, do a Google to exactly find out half a cup of whatever you are using in grams or in ml. So what Google gives you, copy that and then add it here. That's very important. Anything in a teaspoon could be 5 ml, anything in a tablespoon could be 15 ml or grams, because though 1 tablespoon of salt and 1 tablespoon of corn flour, it doesn't weigh the same, they weigh differently. But then that little error is okay. You don't have to really go and measure a tablespoon of corn flour to find out what that weight is, especially only for this particular Excel, not for the recipe. If you're going to use it for a recipe, obviously it has to be precise. But here it doesn't have to be that precise, because that little error for a tablespoon of different ingredients, weight will not alter a lot. Okay, so you could stick to the teaspoons and tablespoons in 5 and 15 ml and grams from the recipe, because it is very difficult to calculate them. For the rest of the cups, Google and then write. If your recipe only has grams, it's well and good, you can just input that there. Once you're done with that, then you know what you need to do for the additional charges, the artist charges, and then you know what you need to do to the actuals, right? After finishing this, you're done with your job, and if you already have the margin, then enter that. Now once you're done with that, this entire box will be populated for you automatically, and then you have the final selling price here. From this is where you need to quote the price of your cake to the client. So hope this entire Excel sheet would be really useful for you. Start practicing it. I'll be looking forward to your work by updating the master sheet with the ingredients and the costing that you have you have bought and from where you've procured. Update that and then decide for the inputs that you need to write. Practice one or two sheets and look at the pricing, what the Excel sheet calculates. If in case you're having errors, you have to start over. Again, make a copy of the sample template and then start putting the inputs from there. And even if you think that you have just messed up with the sample template itself, don't worry, you can just scrap off this Excel itself and download again from your lesson and then start from there. So that will never change, that will not have errors at all. From there you could just go on and then start using. This is a bit of effort because every time I have query when people ask me, ma'am, I've done this brownie, this, how can I price it? Because if I am doing, you don't know what chocolate I have used, you don't know what cocoa powder I have used, but if I have a costing that does not match to the costing that you have done, I do not know your overheads, I do not know from where you're buying what, I have no idea what is the cost of one of your egg. Mine could be 15 rupees, yours could be 6 rupees or vice versa. So I cannot define, or no one can define what is the cost of each thing that everybody is doing, because everyone's products are unique and different. So arriving at the price by this formula, I mean, this Excel sheet is just making your life easy. But if you understand this, you could also do a pen and paper work to figure out what you need. You could have your journal and then keep writing. Understand what this Excel sheet is doing. If you think going back to this Excel is like a little laborious, now the logic has been explained to you, you could do your pen and paper work, well and good. But to coming up to this, costing is very important. And I hope this lesson was useful to you. And this is what I have been advocating my students for so many years, for the past 8 years. And I found it very useful. I've collated everything put together in this particular lesson. And I want this to be used by a lot of bakers, so you know you are pricing your cakes right and be confident about what you're going to sell your cakes for. So looking forward to your working with this Excel sheet and coming back to me with your feedback and what you feel about working with this particular pricing sheet. So see you all in another course, in another lesson. Bye.